want to say something about what was announced today regarding the death of Jamal Khashoggi. Apparently, he has a brother named Salah, and he was killed in the autumn of 2018. This would have been the 19th year before I wrote an article entitled Terror and Torture on Trial in Chicago. Now, this article was about a Palestinian man who had come to the United States and was abducted by the FBI and put in secret detention, subjected to a trial under some legislative changes that used as evidence a confession he alleged had been tortured out of him by the Shin Bet in Israel. And they had even overturned his conviction in Israel because they had determined that the confession was not suitable for evidence in Israel. But when he came to the United States for some reason during that man's trial, Mohammed Salah's trial, they used it to convict him. I wrote an article on this. It was co authored with somebody else who happened to be a military veteran. Now, I've discussed I can't get any of my articles from that publication. Some of them won awards. Some of the coverage I did as an editor won awards. I even did an election spread that was, I believe, the year that somebody got to the state Senate, which they needed to do before they got to the United States Senate and then later to the office of the presidency. It was the first time I did it. I came up with the concept about the questionnaire, how to put the questionnaire out there, how to put it in the paper, how to format it, how to go about doing that kind of election coverage, which is actually very novel in a way. I won't say novel, very unique in a manner, because that's not the kind of manner these days that people do election coverage, giving equal airtime, so to speak, to each of the candidates. No editing, no truncating. That is not accessible to me. I've several times tried to contact the publication. I even went to the publication on site. They made up a reason that I couldn't get into the editorial room to look through the archives. What happened? They don't disappear me completely. They had an annual statement from that publication. It was part of a fundraiser they were doing last year. But the thing is, they mention my name, but the information about me is incorrect. They say I won an award for an article I did not win an award for. And then they misrepresent the other term that they acknowledge me in regards to in this particular promotional material. They say I won an award I didn't win, and then they misrepresent awards I did win. And there's other publications, including one now, that says I won an award as a young leader I did not win at the time. Other people I knew did. But at the time, they did not consider me, I guess, to be qualified. They never even sent me information about the questionnaire or the information you would have to fill out in order to qualify. I know because I had friends that did. I did have friends at the time who qualified for that kind of award. There was a process that one went through where they let you know that you had been acknowledged and that you were going to be awarded this award. I never was contacted. At the time, the actual print publication never put any information about me personally in its publication. Now it says I won an award, 30 under 30. That didn't happen. The award the publication I was the editor at said I won an award. That didn't happen. But there were many, many other awards that were won by me and by the paper while I worked there. And there's no record of those. And I can't get the actual articles. And they're not online. But what is online is an article about that trial of Mohammed Salah that was written by another person, a man, with a different kind of name reference. But his article is about a terrorist trial in Virginia where allegedly a man of Saudi descent set up a charity in Virginia and was charged in manners somewhat similar to the accusations against Muhammad Salah in Chicago, but not exactly. It's not anything to do with it. And at the time, up through 2009, I never heard anything about any Saudi charity that was subjected to that kind of trial and that had that kind of recrimination, and certainly any comparison, including at the time, between any Saudi charity in Virginia and any Palestinian in Bridgeport, Chicago. Bridgeport, Chicagoland area. There was nothing like that at the time. But what is in this article about the charity in Virginia are 3 paragraphs that are word for word what I wrote. Literally. I remember I'm reading, I'm like, that's how I wrote, because it was traumatizing to write that article. I had to contact people in Israel. I had to look at information. I tried to contact the consulate. They didn't want to give a very serious comment on that. But I had to read all of this information about specific techniques they used to interrogate people. The things they did, the way that they sat people, the way that they put them into a bondage, the kinds of ultrasonic information, the radios, the lights, the temperature. I had to read all of this information about different ways they tortured people as part of the research on this article. So it was traumatizing to write it. So I'm reading this other article. I recognize word for word. I recognize that's my article. Now, it was never printed online. How did somebody writing an article about a Saudi charity in Virginia literally lift word for word what I wrote in an article about a Palestinian man in Illinois? And nobody will give me any of my own articles. And nobody will even acknowledge me as ever having been in that position doing what I actually did. What does it mean? Did they take my articles and what I did and use them as actual underwriting or as some form of security? Has it been indexed? Was I intentionally misrepresented as having a mental illness so I could be dispossessed of my own intellectual property so somebody else could claim it on an index or as illegal underwriting on some investment scheme based on what? Torturing people in prison? So it's not enough to be tortured by the same methods in a domestic violence shelter. You have to actually get arrested and get a bail bond and get a lawyer and get time served. And then you qualify? I'm trying to figure this out because every day it becomes more absurd because there is a cost-benefit analysis that goes into these decisions. Now, it's not my place and it's not my jurisdiction to say what happened in the trial regarding Mr. Khashoggi, but something about the mutilation of him in that manner is definitely connected to whoever took out those deals on my work. That so far I've gotten 3 men whose last name is Salah except with an E in English, killed on very strategic benchmark dates connected to when I was editor of that newspaper. I'm grateful that Mr. Khashoggi's brother was not subjected to any sort of political reprisal. But I also know that by forgiving 5 people convicted of a capital offense of that profundity, that it creates a re-leveraging that allows for a fatal option for other people at a different risk level. The men who killed Khashoggi in the manner they did where they did, do you know what getting out of a death sentence is worth in that kind of economy? Somebody just bought insurance to cover them for what? Who's planning to do what with a family forgiving 5 men that brutally murdered and dismembered a critic of the regime? That is unprecedented in terms of insurance. Who would need that kind of insurance? Who would need that kind of risk capital? And who would provide it? See, the thing is, they don't tell us this. Your family member's been taken, your family member's been killed. With all these lawyers and these judges and apparently bankers and their auditors have all of these other considerations about what the crime that happened to you is actually worth. And we have this problem in the United States where we want to promote this idealism about liberalism or progressivism or human rights and say we're against capital punishment. We don't believe in the death penalty as a human right. But we allow people to speculate on the lives of children because they can create economies out of the murders of children. What kind of economy is possible for creation out of commuting the death sentences of 5 men that brutally murdered and dismembered a man on site at the embassy and got convicted? In a country that is known for its severity and its concept of justice in administering capital punishment. What are we creating while all of this other stuff that's going on is being completely slandered and lied about and misrepresented? I'm really hoping somebody who signed 43 other people up as his insurance policy and just had it called isn't hoping that those 5 are coming to him. I won 5 awards when I was at Streetwise newspaper. 2 as an editor, 3 as a writer. They're not yours.